In a quiet corner of Montana, USA, a pregnant bobcat set out on a mission, led by nothing but instinct and desperation. Her fur was dull from weeks without shelter, her ribs faintly showing through her lean frame. Snow still clung to the edges of the forest trails, melting into rivulets that carried the scent of pine, dust, and something else human. She followed that scent. Her name, though no one knew it anymore, was Moon. Once, she had lived in a strange, in-between world, not quite wild, not quite tame as a cub. She'd been rescued from a roadside ditch by a father and his young son, living in a remote cabin north of town. They'd nursed her back to health with milk in a bottle, warmed her with blankets by the wood stove, and slept with her curled in their arms during harsh Montana nights. The boy had named her Moon, for the shape of the white patch on her chest and the way she used to stare up at the sky from the windowsill. They never meant to keep her forever. When she was strong enough, they let her go, weaning her off human contact with care. But Moon didn't go far. She learned to hunt, to climb, to survive. But she never forgot the warmth of human voices or the comfort of hands that meant no harm. When the boy and his father moved, forced out by a job transfer in a bitter winter, the cabin was sold to an elderly couple who didn't believe in second chances. They had chickens and a shotgun, no room in their hearts for wild things that had once been loved. The first time they saw her lounging on the porch, the old man threw a snow shovel at her. The second time, he fired a warning shot. She understood that place once her haven was no longer home. For weeks, she wandered. Her belly grew round and heavy. Hunting became harder. She no longer had the speed she once did, and every noise sent her heart racing. The instinct to protect something not yet born guided her now. Cold nights curled beneath fallen logs, days spent searching for food scraps near dumpsters. But that morning, something deeper stirred. The pain had begun, not sharp, but dull and rhythmic. She knew she needed help. She had seen a place once, near the edge of town, where humans limped in and walked out whole. She had waited, behind trees, watching with yellow eyes as women carrying swollen bellies walked into that small white building and later left with bundles in their arms. If they were healed there, maybe she could be too. The family health clinic was quiet that morning. The sun had just begun to crest over the mountains, casting gold across the frozen ground inside. The clinic smelled of antiseptic and lavender soap. The doctor, a practical man named Harris McKay, was reviewing patient charts and sipping lukewarm coffee. He didn't notice her at first. No one did. Moon, crouched at the edge of the glass doors, meowing softly, a sound that hardly fit her wild kind. Her voice was hoarse, not the sharp scream of a predator, but the uncertain cry of a mother hoping for mercy. It was one of the cleaning staff. Who saw her first? A bobcat. Outside the clinic, he called for Dr. McKay with wide eyes, half expecting the animal to bolt. But she didn't. She looked at them through the glass, her breath fogging it up, her tail flicking low and slow. "You've got to be kidding," McKay murmured, stepping toward the door. "A bobcat?" "She's pregnant," the janitor said quietly, noticing the swollen belly. "She's also dangerous," McKay replied. But when he opened the door slightly, Moon didn't move to attack or to flee. She just meowed again, then took one cautious step forward, then another, until her front paws touched the floor tiles. McKay froze. Every part of his medical training told him this was insane. Wild animals could carry disease. They could lash out. He should scare her off. Let's call animal control. But something about her eyes stopped him. They weren't wild, rolling. They were tired, pleading, familiar. He remembered a story, his old friend James Dorme's, a wildlife vet who lived past the cattle ranches, had once spoken about a bobcat raised by people. Moon, she had come up once during drinks around a campfire. A sweet creature, Kames had said, knew how to find people when she needed them. McKay reached for his phone an hour later. James Dorme's pulled up in his muddy pickup truck. He walked into the clinic with his weathered bag slung over one shoulder, calm as always. "Where is she?" he asked. "In the back utility room." We cleared it out. She walked back there on her own. James nodded, his face serious. If it's Moon, she trusts people. But if she came here, it means something's wrong. They found her lying on a pile of towels the staff had quickly laid down. She barely lifted her head when James entered. But her eyes followed him. She's thin, he said immediately. Malnourished. Breathing's off. She's been out there too long. Can you do anything? McKay asked. She needs a C-section. Now, she's too weak to deliver on her own. And the cubs are already pressing hard against her ribs. Any longer and we'll lose them. And her. This is a people clinic, McKay said. James didn't look up. Then let's make it work anyway. In minutes. The room was transformed. McKay and his staff, who had never so much as held a dog for stitches, gathered supplies. Under James' direction, they sterilized instruments meant for human surgeries. They laid out heating lamps and blankets. They listened carefully as James outlined what to do. Moon never flinched as the anesthesia took hold. Her breath grew shallow and slow. James worked with swift precision. McKay assisted adjusting heart monitors, prepping gauze. It was tense, silent work. The heart monitor beat steadily. James muttered reassurances to himself, to the staff. To the sleeping Bobcat, the first incision revealed the trouble. One cub was turned sideways. Another was entangled in membrane. It took every ounce of James' focus to ease them out. One at a time, checking for signs of life, the room held its breath. The first cub didn't move. Come on, James whispered, rubbing its tiny chest with a finger. A whimper. The next one let out a faint hiss. By the time the third cub was born, there were tears in the eyes of grown men. McKay handed off warm towels. A nurse whispered prayers she hadn't said in years. The cubs, all three of them, were alive. Moon stirred hours later. She blinked slowly, tried to stand. James gently held her down. Easy, girl. You did it. The cubs mewed softly from their basket, warmed by a heating pad and wrapped in clinic towels. When Moon was strong enough, they nestled her close, and her body curled instinctively around them. For the next 24 hours, the clinic transformed. Patients were seen quickly. Staff worked in shifts to check on the Bobcat and her babies. McKay, who had once scoffed at treating animals, was the first to fall silent when one of the cubs purred against his gloved hand. James called a nearby wildlife sanctuary, one tucked between granite ridges and alpine meadows, a place where animals too bruised for the wild were given time to recover. The sanctuary director, a soft-spoken man named Gregor Hayes, agreed immediately. Give her a week, he said. Let her rest. We'll have space ready. So Moon stayed, hidden in the back room of the clinic, not quite a patient anymore. Like a quiet miracle, they were all afraid to disturb. A baby monitor was set up so the nurses could check in without opening the door. A rotation chart was taped outside to ensure someone always checked the heat lamp, the water. The bedding, no one complained. It became a quiet honor. Word spread quickly. By midweek, the back alley behind the clinic had become a pilgrimage site. Locals who had never stepped foot inside came not for antibiotics or checkups, but to give. They brought warm towels, raw meat heating pads, and soft baby toys they didn't know what a wild Bobcat cub might need, but they brought what they could. Children painted signs that read "Thank you, Moon," and taped them to the rear windows. Some brought crayon drawings of bobcats, hearts around the ears. People stood quietly at the edge of the building, hoping for a glimpse, whispering like they were inside a church. Then one gray morning, a beat-up pickup pulled into the alley. The old couple from the cabin stepped out. McKay saw them from the clinic. Windowed, the man held a paper bag. The woman carried a folded quilt. They didn't ask to come in. They just stood there awkward, the bag hanging between them. After a long pause, McKay opened the door. The man cleared his throat. We brought chicken, fresh, not frozen. The woman looked away, blinking, and this quilt. It was on the old porch swing. She used to sit near it. McKay took the bag. She's doing better. She had 3 cubs, all alive. Old man's jaw worked slowly. Didn't know she was anything but a wild pest, he said quietly. She was never just wild, McKay replied. She trusted you. That counts. The man finally looked through the window. Moon lay curled around her cubs, breathing steady, the quilt tucked beneath them now. His shoulders sagged. Guess we failed her. You've got a second chance. He stood in silence. When McKay offered to bring them in for a short visit, they nodded. No words, just slow, heavy steps. They didn't stay long. The man never touched Moon, just looked at her as if trying to remember her smaller, softer shape from years ago. The woman knelt briefly by the edge of the room, brushing her fingers against the blanket. She still has that white patch, she said softly, like a moon. And then, 5 days after Moon's arrival, just as sanctuary arrangements were finalized, the boy came back. Taller now, nearly a teenager. Shaggy hair. Quiet eyes. He wore a red coat too short at the sleeves and clutched a photo of himself as a child. Holding Moon in his lap, he didn't ask permission, he just walked in and waited. McKay led him to the back room without a word. The boy stepped through slowly. Moon lay curled up. Half asleep, her cubs nestled against her. As soon as he spoke, she stirred. Hi, Moon, he whispered. Her ears twitched. Her eyes opened. She didn't growl, didn't back away. She blinked once, then again, and tilted her head, slightly searching. His voice for the familiar. I'm sorry we had to go, he said. I didn't want to. I missed you. He crouched near her but didn't reach out. He just stayed, voice gentle, presence steady. And Moon, though she would never understand the words, recognized something older than language, a sound from her beginning, a bond not built on words, but on warmth, on touch, on nights beside the fire. She blinked again, lowered her head, and exhaled. James arrived that afternoon with his truck lined in hay and padded crates. He checked. Moon's stitches gently transferred the cubs into a smaller carrier, warmed with soft cloths. Moon was lifted carefully. No sedation needed. She walked into the crate on her own. McKay stood outside the clinic as the truck pulled away, his coat zipped to the chin, hands in his pockets, eyes narrowed against the wind. Don't know what we just witnessed, he murmured. James glanced sideways from the driver's seat. Something rare, said. A wild heart asking for help, and us listening. In the forests of Montana, Moon now walks free again, strong, weary, watched over her cubs grow beside her, learning caution and trust. She doesn't linger too close to humans anymore, but sometimes. In the early light, a shape moves near the tree line behind the clinic, watching, remembering, and somewhere deep in the quiet wild, a bobcat mother leads her family through the snow, not just a survivor, but a symbol of what happens when instinct meets compassion and desperation meets. Someone who chooses not to turn away,